Chapter 42 The Wine of Anjou. After almost hopeless accounts of the king, the report of his recovery began to spread through the camp, and as he was in great haste to be at the siege in person, it was said that he would set out as soon as he could mount his horse. In the meantime, his Royal Highness, who knew that he should soon be superseded either by the Duc d'Angoulême or by Bassompierre or by Schomberg, who were already disputing with one another for the command, did but little, lost his time in petty attacks, and dared not hazard any great enterprise to drive the English from the Isle of Ré, where they besieged the citadel of Saint-Martin and the fort of La Prée, whilst the French, on their side, were besieging La Rochelle. D'Artagnan, as we have said, had become now easy in his mind, as always happens after a past danger, and when peril seems to have entirely vanished. Yet one anxiety still remained to him, which was that he received no tidings of his friends. But one morning he received an explanation in the following letter addressed from Villeroy. Monsieur d'Artagnan, Messrs. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, after having had a capital dinner party at my house, and enjoyed themselves very much, made so great a noise that the provost of the castle, who was a strict disciplinarian, put them in confinement for a few days. I must nevertheless execute the orders that they gave me to send you a dozen bottles of my Anjou wine, which they greatly admired. They hope that you will drink to their healths in their own favorite wine. I have done this, and am, sir, with great respect, your most obedient, humble servant, Godot, the host of the Messieurs the Musketeers. Good! Exclaimed D'Artagnan. They think of me amidst their pleasures, as I have thought of them in my weariness. Certainly I will drink to them, and with all my heart too, but not alone. And D'Artagnan hastened to the quarters of two guards, with whom he had become more intimate than with any of the others, to invite them to come and drink some of the delicious wine of Anjou, which had just arrived from Villeroy. One of the two guards was to be on duty in the evening and the other on the morrow, so the appointment was made for the day after. D'Artagnan sent his 12 bottles of wine to the mess room of the guards, desiring to have it kept with care, and on the day of the entertainment, as the dinner was fixed for 12 o'clock, he sent Planchet at 9 to get everything prepared. Planchet, elated at this exaltation to the dignity of butler, determined to perform his duties like an intelligent man. To effect this, he called in the aid of the valet, named Fourneau, of one of his master's guests, and also that of the pretended soldier who had sought to slay our hero, and who, belonging to no regiment, had, since the Gascon spared his life, entered into D'Artagnan's service, or rather into Planchet's. The appointed dinner hour being come, the two guests arrived and took to their places, and the dishes were arranged upon the table. Planchet waited with a napkin on his arm, Fourneau uncorked the bottles, and Brisemont, for that was the invalid's name, decanted the wine, which seemed to have been somewhat disturbed by the shaking of the journey. The first bottle being a little thick towards the bottom, Brisemont poured the lees into a glass of wine, and D'Artagnan permitted him to drink it, for the poor wretch was still very weak. The guests, having finished their soup, were just conveying the first glass of wine to their lips, when suddenly the cannon sounded from Fort Louis and Pont-Neuf. The guards, thinking that there was some unexpected attack either from the garrison or from the English, immediately seized their swords. D'Artagnan did the same, and the three hastened out toward their posts. But scarcely were they out of the mess room before they found the reason of this great noise. Cries of "Long live the king! Long live the cardinal!" re-echoed on every side, and drums were beat in all directions. In fact, the king, in his impatience, had made such forced marches that he had at that moment arrived with a reinforcement of 10,000 men. His musketeers preceded and followed him. D'Artagnan, placed in line with his company, with an excessive gesture saluted his friends and Monsieur de Treville, whom he had once recognized. The ceremony of reception being ended, the four friends were soon united. "Egad!" exclaimed D'Artagnan, "you could not have arrived in better time. The dinner will not have had even time to get cold. Is it not so, gentlemen?" added the young man, turning to the two guards, whom he presented to his friends. Ah, said Porthos, "it appears that you are feasting." "I hope," said Aramis, "that there are no ladies at your dinner." "Is there any wine that is drinkable in this paltry place?" said Athos. "Why, sang Dieu, there is your own, my dear friend," answered D'Artagnan. "Our wine?" said Athos in astonishment. "Yes, that which you sent me." "Wine that we sent you." "Yes, you know very well, that wine from the hills of Anjou. Yes, I know what wine you're talking of. Your favorite wine, when I have neither champagne nor chambertin. Well, in the absence of champagne and chambertin, you must be contented with this. And so we, gluttons as we are, have sent you some wine, have we?" said Porthos. "No, but it is the wine which was sent me by your orders." "By our orders?" echoed the Musketeers. "Did you send the wine, Aramis?" inquired Athos. "No, did you, Porthos?" "No, did you, Athos?" "No." "If it was not you," said D'Artagnan, "then it was your host." "Our host, yes, your host, Godot at Villeroi." "Faith, let it come from whom it may, no matter," said Porthos. "Let us taste it, and if good, let us drink it." "No," said Athos, "let us not drink any wine without knowing whence it comes." "You're right, Athos," said D'Artagnan. "Did none of you direct the host, Godot, to send me the wine?" "No, and yet he sent you some in our names?" "Here's the letter," said D'Artagnan, and he presented the letter to his companions. "It's not his writing," said Athos. "I know his hand, for it was I who, before we left, settled our joint account." "A false letter," said Porthos indignantly. "We have not been imprisoned." "D'Artagnan," said Aramis in a tone of reproach, "how could you believe that we had become noisy?" D'Artagnan grew suddenly pale, and a convulsive trembling shook his limbs. "You frighten me," said Athos. "What can have occurred?" "Let us run, my friends, let us run," said D'Artagnan. "A horrible suspicion crosses my mind. Can this, too, be another of that woman's acts of vengeance?" It was now Athos who, in his turn, grew pale. D'Artagnan sprang toward the mess-room, followed by the three Musketeers and the two guards. The first object which struck D'Artagnan's sight on entering the room was Brisemont, extended on the floor, writhing in most horrible convulsions. Planchet and Fourneau, looking as pale as corpses, were endeavoring to assist him, but it was evident that all aid was useless. The features of the dying man were contracted with agony. "Ah!" cried he when he perceived D'Artagnan. "You pretended to forgive me, and you poisoned me!" "I, wretch, I!" exclaimed the young man. "What can you mean?" "I say that it is you who gave me the wine, and it is you who told me to drink it. You wanted to take your revenge. Oh, it's dreadful!" "Do not think so, Brisemont," said D'Artagnan, "for I swear—" "Oh, but God is there. God will punish you. My God, may you one day suffer what I suffer now." "Upon the gospel!" cried D'Artagnan, rushing toward the dying man. "I swear that I knew not that this wine was poisoned, and also that I was about to drink it as well as yourself." "I do not believe you," exclaimed the soldier, and he expired in exaggerated tortures. "Horrible, horrible," muttered Athos, whilst Porthos broke the bottles, and Aramis, rather late, it must be confessed, sent off for a confessor. "Oh, my friends," said D'Artagnan, "you have now again saved my life, and not mine only, but the lives of these gentlemen also. Gentlemen," continued he, addressing the guards, "may I request your silence concerning this catastrophe? Persons of high condition may be implicated in what you have now seen, and the misery of it all would fall upon us." "Ah, sir," stammered out Planchet, more dead than alive. "Ah, sir, what a narrow escape I've had." "What, you rascal!" cried D'Artagnan. "Were you going to drink my wine?" "To the king's health, sir. I was going to drink one little glass, if Fourneau had not said that someone called me." "Alas!" said Fourneau, whose teeth were chattering with fright. "I wanted to get rid of him that I might drink some myself." "Gentlemen," said D'Artagnan, addressing the guards, "you must be aware that our entertainment would be but a melancholy affair after what has passed. I beseech you, therefore, to receive my excuses, and let us postpone it till some other day." The two guards courteously accepted these apologies, and understanding that the four friends wished to be alone, they took their departure. When the young guard and the three musketeers were without witnesses, they looked at one another for an instant, in a way which proved how well they understood the seriousness of their situation. "First," said Athos, "let us quit this room. A dead man is but sorry company." "Planchet," said D'Artagnan, "I recommend you to look to the body of this poor devil and see that it is buried in consecrated ground. He had committed a crime, it is true, but he had repented of it." Having entrusted the funeral rites of Brisemont to Planchet and Fourneau, the four friends quitted the room. The host gave them another chamber and furnished them with fresh eggs, whilst Athos himself fetched water for them from the well. Aramis and Porthos were, in a few words, informed of all that had occurred. "Well," said D'Artagnan to Athos, "you see, my dear friend, it is war to the death." Athos shook his head. "Yes, yes," said he, "I see it well enough, but are you sure that it is she?" "Perfectly. Nevertheless, I confess that I still have some doubts." "But that fleur-de-lis upon the shoulder! It is an Englishwoman who has committed some crime in France, and has been branded in consequence." "Athos, it is your wife, I tell you," repeated D'Artagnan. "Do you not remember how the two marks agree? And yet I should have thought that the other was dead. I had hanged her so thoroughly." It was D'Artagnan who shook his head this time. "But after all, what is to be done? The fact is that it is impossible to remain in this manner, with a sword always suspended over one's head," replied Athos, "and you must get freed from such a situation." "But how?" "Listen, try to find her and to come to an understanding with her. Say to her, peace or war. On the honor of a gentleman, I will never say one word or take one step to injure you. On your part, give me a solemn oath to remain neutral with respect to me. If not, I will go to the chancellor, to the king, and to the executioner. I will excite the court against you, and will declare you branded. I will cause you to be tried, and if you are acquitted, well then, on the word of a gentleman, I will kill you myself, as I would a mad dog." "I like this plan well enough," said D'Artagnan, "but how am I to find her?" "Time, my dear friend, time brings opportunity. Opportunity is man's martingale. The more one has shipped, the more one gains when he knows how to wait." "Yes, but to wait surrounded by assassins and poisoners—" "Bah," said Athos, "God has preserved us hitherto, and God will preserve us still." "Yes, besides we are men, and after all it is our business to risk our lives. But she?" added D'Artagnan in a low voice. "And who is she?" asked Athos. "Constance." "Madame Bonancieux? True, I had forgotten," said Athos. "Poor fellow, I forgot that you were in love." "Well," said Aramis, "but did you not see by the very letter that you found on the wretch who was killed that she was in a convent? One is quite safe in a convent, and as soon as the siege of La Rochelle is ended, I promise you on my own part—" "Good," said Athos, "good. Yes, my dear Aramis, we know that your views all tend toward religion." "I am only a musketeer temporarily," said Aramis meekly. "It would seem that he has not heard from his mistress for a long while," said Athos in a whisper to D'Artagnan. "But do not make any remark, we know it." "Well," said Porthos, "it seems to me that there's a very simple means." "And what is that?" demanded D'Artagnan. "She's in a convent, you say?" continued Porthos. "Yes." "Well, as soon as the siege is raised, we will take her out of this convent." "But first we must know which convent she is in." "Ah, that is true," said Porthos. "But do you not say, my dear D'Artagnan," said Athos, "that is the queen who has chosen this convent for her?" "Yes, I believe so, at least." "Well, then, Porthos will help us in that case." "How so, pray?" asked Porthos. "Why, through your marchioness, or duchess, or princess. She ought to have a long arm." "Hush," said Porthos, putting his fingers to his lips. "I fancy she's a cardinalist, and she must know nothing about it." "Then," said Aramis, "I undertake to get some news of Madame Bonancieux." "You, Aramis?" exclaimed the three friends. "You, and how so?" "Through the Queen's almoner, with whom I am very intimate," answered Aramis, blushing. On this assurance, the four friends, who had ended their simple repast, separated, with the promise of meeting again the same evening. D'Artagnan returned to the Minimes, and the Three Musketeers went to the king's quarters, where they had to provide themselves with lodgings.